And now, our feature presentation.
The best
in the world
is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Frazier, DKM, and JCal.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on this very special episode of the Alliance Guys podcast. Of course, with us today is the last man standing. That is the last NWA World Jr Heavyweight Champion. I feel kind of privileged here because I'm actually speaking to two guys who held that NWA championship and never lost it, and that is Barrett Brown and, of course, my podcasting partner, Kevin Douglas. Barrett, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
I'm doing well, man. I'm living it up right now on our second honeymoon, our 1 year anniversary. So spending it with you guys while my wife goes and gets cheeseburgers.
Perfect. Perfect.
So she may roll up with some cheeseburgers, and it wouldn't be Kevin on a podcast with JCal if I wasn't eating during the podcast.
That is true. That is a true statement. So let's not stand on ceremony. Let's get to it. Of course, you guys who are familiar with Barrett Brown, you know about his legacy that he started creating nearly 10 years ago, wrestling all throughout the Southwest, but even more so than that, becoming the NWA World Jr Heavyweight Champion, currently the Southwest Wrestling Entertainment Television Champion. You could see him on New Japan World, where he's, conquering talents from all across the globe in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Barrett, how the heck are you, man?
I'm living the dream, man. Even during this uncertain time that we're going through right now, pro wrestling is still alive to me. I've talked to a lot of people over the last few months, and a lot of us were really concerned about professional wrestling. But I think that we are finding ways to keep it alive. I think that we're finding ways to still entertain people in this uncertain time. Because there for a while, I was so unsure if wrestling would come back in general. But we're finding ways to safely bring it back. And I think that's most important, is that we're keeping it alive and we're still entertaining people.
Barrett, two of my favorite guys to watch have been over the last probably year. And even during all of the quarantine have been my buddy Hammerstone, which I'm sure both you guys are pretty familiar with him from MLW, and you. Both you guys have shown that you're multifaceted. I've seen both you guys training in rings, working with young guys, owning your skills, using their time wisely. I know that you've been working a lot on your body and working out and trying to get in better shape. Same thing with him. And so, again, I think these are the things that you have to do in these times, not sit back and whine and complain about it, but say, hey, where's the opportunity? How can I seize the opportunity? And I think, getting involved with some of the people you're involved with right now, I think you're doing a great job with that.
I appreciate that, man. And it's funny that you bring up Hammerstone, because I had to try to find another outlet during this downtime. So I reached out to Hammerstone, and I was sent a link to a little bodybuilding competition that's going to happen near my town. It's going to happen in Waco in December, and Hammerstone is actually coaching me currently through the process of getting stage ready. So nice. You kind of hit the nail on the head with Hammerstone. So I'm working with him right now, actually.
Yeah, I'm no stranger to good, and those of you watching, listening, me and Barrett go way back. I mean, I was there when Barrett first broke. Immediately knew right off the bat, it really wasn't your skill that stood out to me, Barrett. It was more that you took wrestling seriously, and you could tell this was something that you really wanted to do, and that's a rare thing. And I want to say the last time I saw you maybe live had to be at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony a few years back up in Wichita Falls. You guys' match was far and away the best match of the night. It stole the show. And at that point, that was when I said, anybody that'll listen to me, I'm going to tell them that they need to keep an eye on what's going on with you. And frankly, sometimes the waiting game in wrestling can be huge and it can be hard to deal with. But I think you've done that gracefully. I think your time is a little bit overdue, but hey, when the time comes, you're going to be ready, and that's what's most important. And so it's kind of funny. I feel the same way about Hammerstone. So it's cool to hear that you guys are working together, and keep going and keep doing what you're doing. I mean, we're going to talk a lot more about this kind of stuff as the show goes on, because once I turn, Jay's the master of ceremonies. He's probably got an itinerary and a bunch of cool stuff for us to talk about. So I'm going to be quiet and Jay, you take it away. Take us where we're going, buddy.
Well, I mean, we don't have an itinerary because this is just about the two old guys that two old boys talking about some wrestling over here. So, obviously, there's a process that gets someone from as a kid. I'm assuming you were a fan of professional wrestling. I'm assuming that there was something that drove. That spoke to you in pro wrestling that got you to take that step from being a fan to a pro wrestler. And I'm always curious that story of what motivated you to say, you know what, I think I can do this. I think I can do this in the ring and I want to do it. So what were the steps that you took to get into the world of professional wrestling, and what inspired you to be a pro wrestler?
Honestly, I grew up in a household that my parents were always fanatics of professional wrestling.
Okay.
I remember just like every Saturday night I would watch Goldberg on the TV, and I was just fascinated by his presence and that aura around what these superstars were doing. And it was a fire that never really died in me as I grew up. And obviously, my parents thought it was a phase at one point, but when I became a teenager and I told them that this is what I wanted to do, I was fortunate and blessed enough for them to tell me, if that's how you truly feel, then if you put everything into it, then we will support you. And I know that Kevin can vouch for me that I have probably one of the best support systems in the business right now. I am very fortunate to have them, and they have always supported me. And I can name just on one hand the number of shows that they have missed that I've been on. They have always been there. And so I grew up in that household, and I think it was for my 15th birthday. My mom surprised me, and a guy that she graduated high school with actually was running a little bitty school like right next to where I grew up. So I went to him. It was kind of where I got my feet wet. But from Cody, I went to like Killer Tim Brooks and really learned the deep fundamentals of professional wrestling. Killer Tim Brooks, Johnny Mantell, Steve Anthony, all these guys that taught me the true fundamentals of pro wrestling, and those are the foundations that I have never forgotten. It's just what I've built upon over the years.
I think that's really awesome, because it's funny getting to hear that someone has had someone support them. For me, my family didn't support it at all, like whatsoever, and so it was very. Speaking of being fortunate, that's when Rodney Mack and Jazz almost took me in like family. I mean, right. like a little brother, or sometimes like their own kid. Rodney's the one who taught me how to pay bills and how to cook for myself, and I mean stuff that you would think that parents would do. But no, that was my first apartment that I ever got, my first car, my first time cooking food and meal prep and all that stuff. They taught me all that. And I can vouch for your family, because some of the best pictures I've ever had taken of me as a wrestler were by your mom.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty awesome thing. This show really has this series kind of got brought up because we were going through the history of the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title and kind of going through different sections. We talked a little bit about the early days. We talked a little bit about some of the times where the title may have been a little bit obscured. We kind of stopped down around the time that I became champion and what's happened beyond. And then, my question to you would be, because I know there's a statement that you made that when you won the title, and what an awesome title that you won, the red belt that you had. That thing was what a great thing to hold something like that. You said that at the time that was like a pinnacle of your career. How long did you want to win that? How long did you wait? What was your route? I mean, I've told my story of how I got there. It was like a 10-year. When did you know you wanted the belt? When did you know that that's something you wanted to do? And what did it feel like, when that moment happened?
So my original trainer, he was a fan of the original NWA World Class, a huge Von Erich fan. And his pinnacle that he always wanted was to win the NWA World Heavyweight. And so in that facet, I decided, I was like, what, if I were to ever win the World Junior Heavyweight title, then we will know that all this training wasn't for nothing, that it would be full circle. And actually I think that my very first shot at the title was against you in Cyprus.
Right.
So, and I remember just having that match with you for the title. I thought that was full circle. But then when the years went by and I was in contention, I was like, this actually, what started as kind of a joke might become a reality. And I'm in the mindset of not wanting to get excited about anything in the business until it actually happens. But when the day came and I had it in my hands, it took everything I had not to cry until I got to the back, because at that point I realized, like, hey, this was my holy grail. It's now in my possession. And now I know that everything that I've been through until this point paid off.
Right. So when you won the title, until it, I guess they put it on hiatus. What were the title defenses? Tell me a little bit about your time as champion.
So it was kind of odd because the time that I won the title was right in the middle of the transition period. So we really couldn't advertise any defenses. The only defense that I think was actually notable was, I believe it was in Arkansas against Chavo Guerrero. But I also defended it, I think it was about 5 other times, but we just couldn't advertise it. I defended it once around Dallas, and they had to advertise it just as a singles. But at the event, we said, this is for the World Junior title, and it threw everybody off. They're like, why isn't this advertised? And I said, because we can't. Just because ownership changed of not just the brand, but the main titles. So we could not use the title as advertisement, because I wanted to travel the world with it. I wanted to go to Japan with it. And but I understand that when the ownership changed, that wasn't really my decision at that point. So it was odd, but I understood the situation at the same time.
Well, what an irony that we're on the phone with two World Junior Heavyweight champions that during transitional period, because this thing happened to me. I became champion during the Bill Barron's era, and as I was champion, the title was transferred over to what do we call it, the Bruce Tharpe era. And so interestingly enough, both of us shared a very similar experience with that.
Definitely.
Jay, what was that like? What was that like for you? I mean, what was going on in your head during all that?
Well, I mean, in both situations, it was kind of confusing, because as a fan, I mean, we're not supposed to know the inner workings. We're not supposed to see the sausage being made. But a lot of this stuff was kind of coming out, especially during your time, Kevin. when there was the lawsuit and everything was going on, it just seemed very like surreal. Like, wait, what? So what's going on? These guys who've been members of the NWA for such a long time are now out. What does that do for Kevin? What does that do for Chase Owens? What does that do for Jason Kincaid? Because you guys were like, that was the junior heavyweight division essentially. And then when we fast forward to Barrett Brown and the ending of the Tharpe era, the launching of the Billy Corgan era, the Lightning One era, if you will, again, there was so many questions and no answers. Because, I mean, you heard about, David Lagana saying, hey, we're going to honor the contracts until the end of the year. And then when those are up, we're redoing everything. So we were expecting, we didn't know that the Junior Heavyweight Championship would be sidelined. We didn't know that, all the titles would be basically declared vacant with the exception of Tim Storm's 10 pounds of gold and Jazz's women's championship. Everything else was put on hold. And they made announcements about, the Heat Seekers, how they were stripped of the titles. I think Mustang Mike was stripped of the title. I think Haggis was stripped of the title. But they never really said that you were stripped of the title. Barrett, like they never really said, hey, we're taking the championship away from you. They just kind of sealed it. So it was very problematic. And as someone who really enjoyed the junior heavyweight division of the NWA, going back to like we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, going back to the 90s when it was being regularly defended in Japan as part of the Super J Crown and appearing on WCW programming, that junior heavyweight championship had some great champions behind it, both in the 90s and even before, going back into the 80s and 70s. And so to me, I was really disappointed with the NWA's decision to essentially seal that title. Now, again, they've never declared it vacant. They never stripped you of the belt, but they're also not booking you to defend the title.
Right, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I always had positive interactions with both Billy Corgan and David Lagana, and the initial phone call was that he wasn't sure if it would be sent back or not. It was in the stages of them deciding how they were going to restart the brand. And when they ultimately decided to start from the ground up with just the heavyweight title, David called me and he was very respectful, and he told me their plan, and he verbatim told me, we're not stripping you, and we're not going to announce that you're stripped. You are still the champion. He said, and if it's brought back, you'll still be the champ. We just need the title back because that's, at this point, it's Billy Corgan's property, which I understood. And I think that the reason that I always stayed on good terms with them for so long was because I think that I was kind of one of the only people that really didn't argue when that happened. I think that there were some other issues with other main title holders that could have caused some. I was just thankful to be in that position to hold the championship, and I wanted to be in good graces because I knew that if they started from the ground up, it could be something special, and I wanted to be a part of it any way that I could be, so I just played ball.
Well, Barrett, I'm sorry to interrupt there, Jay, but I think that that's actually evident by the way you were treated. Because if there's anything I know, if you weren't on good terms with the company, they would have had no problem taking the belt off you and making it known like they did with somebody. So I think that was a good move on your behalf, and I think it's something that will pay off down the road, especially with your dealings with New Japan. I'm pulling big for you on that just because I think you fit in very well with a company like New Japan. I think they have places for the junior heavyweight wrestlers, especially good ones that can go out there and really deliver like you can. And so, who knows how this thing might come full circle for you. So that was a good move on your behalf, is you take the high road, always be the most professional. And obviously the people that you talked about who brought you into the business must have been the ones that instilled that in you.
Definitely, man. And every time that I talk to Killer Tim Brooks, ever since he trained me, he had always asked me, have you been to Japan yet? Have you been to Japan yet? He knew that was my goal, and one of my last interactions with him was telling him that New Japan had brought me back, and I just remember he smiled, and we had a good interaction, and it was actually, ironically, the day that he passed away, it hurt me, man. Like, I was not in a good way, and I just had to have a sit-down talk. I'm a born-again Christian. I had to talk to the Lord, and I told him, I was like, look, I was burnt out, I was upset, and I said, if there's any reason for me to stay in this business and to not just focus on opening a school, then tell me now. And about an hour later, I got a phone call from New Japan. And I was like, there's my sign. So,
yeah. You talk about being a born-again Christian. I mean, you have not because you ask not. And so, asking shall be given unto you, knocking the door will open. So that's an awesome thing, man, that you leaned on the only thing that kept me alive to this day. That and actually a couple of the guys in this podcast. Well, I always believe that God works through people. Yeah. It's not always just a sign from heaven all the time, but sometimes it's a guy like DK who's on the show right now, but he knows how I feel, that sits you down and say, hey man, you're better than this. And that was probably the beginning of a turnaround for my life. So that's really cool to hear, man. And another question I actually had for you is, so tell me what's, I'm obviously really good friends with some of the people involved in I guess it's the SWE Fury, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I mean, Jay, I know you wanted to hear about this. Is this a good time to segue into that? Maybe ask questions. Tell us what's going on with that. Tell us some of the people involved. I know you're running with some of my, old family members. So tell us what's going on there.
It is a very, very well put together TV production they've got over there. And I mean, James Beard, he's not going to be involved in anything that's lackluster. I love James to death, and he's got something very special there. And I actually went live with some of the roster there, and they don't pick bottom of the barrel guys. They pick and choose high quality talent. And I truly think that that's one example of a place where you're going to find every different type of pro wrestling. You're going to touch every kind of fan, and the quality of talent there, I truly think that it's a situation of iron sharpening iron. Every professional wrestler there is going to get better no matter who they're put there. So it's very special, very well put together. Just another thing I'm glad to be a part of.
So when you won the television title, who did you win the television title from? How'd that happen?
So it was actually vacant at the time. So I'm their first champion. I had a one-on-one with someone that actually, I guess I won't really mention on this show because they were a big part of the Speak Out movement, but I had a very good match with this person, won the championship, and from then I've defended it against, guys like Chandler Hopkins, who I'll shout out, because Chandler's a guy that hasn't been in the business for many years, but he is very quickly becoming one of my favorite opponents just because he gets it, he works hard, he's willing to learn. And those are the kind of guys you'll find at SWE. So it's, again, iron sharpens iron, and he's getting better and better along with everybody else.
Jay?
Hey, well, I'm actually listening, but also kind of looking. And because I was trying to find that matchup where you won the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship, right. But as I'm looking at some of these names that you've stepped into the ring with, and when you say iron sharpens iron, man, I mean, you've been in the fire forge, because there's some great talent that you've stood across the ring from. Houston Carson, of course, Tim Storm, of course, Kevin Frazier right here. It's pretty awesome. Matt Riviera, somebody who I know isn't tied to the NWA, but while he was a part of the NWA, really did a lot for their brand, I thought, Matt Riviera. And so I guess the question I have to ask you is, who are some of the opponents that have really forged who you are, and what matchups have been the most satisfying for you as a wrestler?
It's funny that you mentioned Matt Riviera, because back in the day, whenever he helped run traditional championship wrestling based out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Man, he gave me my first shot at TV, and he put me with some of the best talent in the world. I remember at his production tagging with Tommy Dreamer, Matt Hardy. I got to wrestle Lance Archer for the first time there. Wolfie D was there. He put me with Wolfie D. But I think one of the best moments of my career happened at one of his productions whenever he put me one-on-one, just a 19-year-old kid against Cowboy Bob Orton.
Wow.
And that was just, I think that I got about 6 years of experience just in that 8 minutes in the ring with Bob, man. Just sitting backstage picking his brain. It was like going through wrestling school again. But outside of that, man, one guy that I always considered a stepping stone guy for me, that I would meet him in the ring every few years. It would kind of be a test to where I was at, was ACH. He would always test me, bring out the best in me. And he always tested me, and I've always appreciated that.
Well, I've seen at least one of you guys matches, and I can definitely see, before you had matches with him and after you had matches with him, I could see the influence that his wrestling style had on your wrestling style. And for me, maybe Albert and I weren't the best of friends, but I definitely respected him always as a wrestler. And I think you came out the better for it in terms of just what I saw in the ring from the last time I saw you. Of course, I've seen some of your stuff on online whenever I can get a chance. But my big thing about you is more about your determination to get where you're trying to go. And I guess that would be a good question to ask: is what is the next thing for you? What's the brass ring you're trying to grab right now in terms of your career? Of course, if I'm in your position, I'm thinking, New Japan, junior heavyweight title kind of thing. But what is Barrett Brown got his sights set on right now?
I could easily say a full-time contract with New Japan, but I'll be honest with you, man. My main goal is to go to Japan. I've always wanted to wrestle in Japan. I had the opportunity over the last couple of years to have 2 different tours of Europe, but to me, that was very cool. I was very fortunate to do that, but Japan has always been the goal. And whether that's a one-off, whether that's a full-time contract deal, Japan has always been the goal. And I like to set not just overall goals, but stepping stone goals for myself. Complete training. I did that. Had my first match. Did that. Win my first match. And the list goes on. And I've gotten to a point to where I got the call, and now they trust me. And now it's, am I going to get the contract? Will they take the fees whenever all this crazy stuff winds down? That's kind of where I'm at. So, but I'm also a big believer in not just focusing on the end goal, but enjoying the journey. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, man.
So I'm sorry, Jay, to jump in here, but while it's on my head, so I don't forget. So Barrett, one of my goals as a wrestler was to bring a world championship back to the great state of Texas. And however that happened, it happened. You talked about your faith. A lot of things that had to go right for that to happen. So I'm gonna set a goal for you, just for my own self as a fan of Barrett Brown, obviously as a friend, but this is as a fan. I've stepped out of the ring. I've been out of the ring for more than 5 or 6 years now. I can step back and enjoy the matches and enjoy being a wrestler or enjoy wrestling. And I would say, as a fan of Barrett Brown, man, I want to see a guy from Texas raise that New Japan junior heavyweight title, compete in the New Japan Best of Super Juniors tournament, and be one of those guys that came from the same place that I came from, that maybe I had a small piece or a small part to do with it, to bring that sort of prestige, to take maybe what guys before you laid a foundation for, to see you take that to the next level. That would be something, as a fan of yours, that I would be rooting to see have happen, just because I don't know, if I'm in your shoes, that would be a huge thing. And again, you don't know what it is till it happens, but that's something I'd love to see happen.
I appreciate that. I mean, again, if I were to win the world, the junior title for New Japan Pro Wrestling, it'd be a dream come true. And you know, like I said, just to be there is a dream come true. But I try not to take anything for granted. So I will. I'll definitely keep that in mind. And if that does happen, you'll be one of the first guys I call.
Well, that's the beauty of being a fan at this
Right.
stage. But you know, is I can wish. Me and Jay do this all the time. You know, we wish for things, and you have to say the right things. But I'm the one that I can come on here and be like, hey, I'm a fan. This is just what I want to see. And so that would be something I'd love to see. Jay, I'll defer. Sorry to interrupt, but I just didn't want to lose that train of thought. I wanted Barrett to know where my heart was at.
Hey, nothing but respect for that. But I do want to kind of go backwards a little bit because we have been jumping around. But I do want to get specific about some of your times in different places. So, like, we brought up traditional championship wrestling. A 19-year-old Barrett Brown wrestling under the mask, Americos. How was that? Like, I always wonder how that conversation goes. Like, hey, you're a great wrestler. We want to use you, but put this mask on because we have a character we want you to fill. How is that for you as a wrestler? I mean, is that something you were open to right away, or did you have to be talked into it, or was it your idea?
It was something that I was slightly talked into because I was so unsure at the time. But the overall consensus was that at the time I was still a teenager, and I was still clean cut, bald headed. I looked like I was 13, 14 years old. And they knew how much I cared. They knew my skill, and they wanted to push me. But believably on TV, this, you know, little greenhorn looking kid wasn't going to knock around guys like, you know, Lance Archer or Wolfie D and guys like that. So they had a character in mind that they needed someone to fill. And they said, you would be perfect, and we can use this and elevate you. And so that's exactly what happened. But it started out more as a Dusty Rhodes Midnight Rider gimmick, just because it was like, okay, if Barrett Brown doesn't win against Lance Hoyt and win the championship, then he's out of the company. So I had like a 6-minute squash with Lance. And then like the next taping, they talked about, oh, Barrett Brown's gone. Well, lights go out. Here's Americos that has like the same tattoo on his back, but that's not Barrett Brown. You know what I mean? So there for a while, that opened a lot of doors for me, man. And I never really appreciated that gimmick until about a year later when I realized, you know, with my face covered, I had to compensate with my body language because your eyes connect with that audience. I couldn't do that. But in the end game, it helped my facials so much. And that's one thing that Gabe Sapolsky told me. He said, your facials are great. And I had to sit down and realize, you know, El Generico and Sami Zayn, like his facials are amazing. And it's because of that mask. All the years under that mask, he had to compensate. And now naturally, the facials are there.
Well, I want to jump in. I want to jump in real quick. So maybe you guys don't know this, but when I broke into the wrestling world, I was just like you, Barrett. I was 18, 19 years old. I looked like I was 12. And so my very first gimmick looked almost carbon copy to yours.
Yeah.
I had a mask with the hair, and I had, you know, like a bunch of loud gear. I did a bunch of flips and stuff, and I had a lot of success. Actually did my first suicide dive in that character, that gimmick, over on Necro Butcher. Nice. I believe I kicked out one of his teeth that night. And he laughed at me. He laughed at me. You know, just imagine being a 19-year-old kid and Necro Butcher comes out. But, you know, I get exactly what you're saying because it lends a certain level of credibility that looking like a kid out there doesn't lend. But at the same time, when you kind of get set free of that, it kind of makes you realize how much your body language, how much you had to do a lot, what I would call, like in movies, they call it physical acting. In wrestling, I would call it like physical selling, where you have to sell more with your body than with your face, which your face can do so much more. So it does give you a certain dynamic, and it does work with you. And I think you stepping back, understanding that, you know, not only were you doing what was quote unquote best for the company, but you ended up doing what was best for you too, regardless of, I know you got criticism for it, but, you know, I'll just let you know, it's not what people say to your face sometimes, but what they say behind your back. And, you know, there were many times where people maybe had something to say about you. I said, well, I didn't see you on SmackDown last Thursday. I saw him on there. Yeah. And, you know, these are things that, these are experiences that you can't trade for anything. I'm stuck up for another guy just like you that was on our show not too long ago, Ricky Starks. And I think some of those things, these are experiences that really help you because it helps you shake loose some of those butterflies that you might have, later on down the road. You're much more accustomed to that. I think all the seasoning has paid off for you, because right now I would say of the guys that are in your, what would you say, your contemporaries, you definitely have the most polish, and that's something that people won't be able to not take notice of when you get the opportunity to show it. So anyways, Jay, I interrupted you one more time, so.
No, that's all good. My daughter just walked in to give me a pillow. I don't know why, but I now have a pillow. So,
hey.
So then the transition from traditional championship wrestling, of course, to at that point, that's when the NWA and the new ownership kind of took over. And when I say new ownership, I mean the Bruce Tharpe era. A lot of guys that you were associated with from traditional championship wrestling, like Matt Riviera or Greg Anthony. A lot of these guys were starting to have that spotlight shined on them with the NWA. And your time did come, but eventually it didn't come immediately. What were your thoughts when that transition happened, when a lot of the guys you were working with in traditional championship wrestling, and Tim Storm included, of course, when you guys started taking it to the next level with the NWA?
I thought that, so many of the people deserved it. I had waited so long to see Tim Storm finally get his. That man did so much for me. He's the reason that I even got looked at by TCW, by Matt. So I just, whenever he won the championship, I was elated. And, now that I think about it, just to hold the World Junior title at the same time as him holding the World Heavyweight Championship, that's surreal. I remember seeing a photo that James Beard shared. I think it was backstage at a CWA Wrestle Raise event that Matt Riviera helped put on. James Beard was in between myself and Tim Storm. It was the last picture I took with the title, holding both of our arms up, and it was just a really cool moment. And it's just really cool to see people that care so much and work so hard get the things that they deserve. And I think that, like you said, all those guys definitely deserved it, and I think Tim Storm is at the top of that list for sure.
When you were wrestling in traditional championship wrestling, I did want to ask you this. Did you feel like working from that TV audience that helped your career advance as well? Like being able, not so much being seen on television, but literally working in front of a TV audience? Did that benefit you?
Absolutely. That was my first experience in front of roaming cameras, a hard camera, anything like that. Sure, they would have little hard cameras set up at some local shows, but nothing like that. Right. And my debut, they had over 1,000 tickets sold, general admission. Awesome. So they threw me into the fire, and I just naturally had to find a camera to sell into and know how to run the ropes or work according to where the hard camera was. And if I was selling, I got to find that roaming cam to get personal with that audience. It just, over a few tapings, it started to become natural. It was a process, but even at smaller shows I do now, I have always carried that knowledge with me.
Are there a lot of parallels between traditional championship wrestling and SWE now? Do you feel like it's similar in the style that it's producing? Because I knew a little bit about traditional championship wrestling. I think it was on MAV TV. I don't remember exactly where, but I was able to watch quite a bit of it, actually. And maybe it was the YouTube videos, I'm not sure. But I remember seeing that environment, and then the little bit I've seen of SWE, I kind of feel like maybe there's, at the very least, a similar philosophy.
There's quite a few similar philosophies. James Beard was involved at TCW as well, so I see a lot of similarities there. I think there's still some kinks being worked on just because SWE is still relatively new. Right. But they're getting their footing, and just, it's not so much, it's not one of those shows where you get to the venue and you just kind of goof off. It's you get there and you're in business mode. You know, you have what you need to do. You have your pre-tapes. You have, you know, the in-ring interviews that have to be done. You know, just they are in full-blown business mode, and that's how it was at TCW. So they definitely mean business, and I think that as time goes on, I think that it will very much mirror what TCW did, but in their own flavor.
Understood.
So there's a lot of interesting. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Well, no, I was going to jump on. So if you have something to add, please do it.
Well, so it's just a lot of funny things that you bring up. So, about how old were you when you started with TCW, Barrett?
Let me see. 18. Yeah, I was 18 years old. I remember I had really just branched out because the first 3 years of my career, I just stayed in Texas, mostly because, you know, I couldn't get a license to be a wrestler. I was underage. I couldn't travel. But once I turned 18, that's whenever the NWA kind of started using me. And that's whenever I just decided on a whim to go with my folks because Tim Storm recommended TCW. We went one weekend, and Tim introduced me to Matt, and I was 18 years old at that time. You are correct.
So check this out. So I was 19 when I started with the NWA. I did my first television taping for a company in Arlington called PCW when I was about the same age, about 19, 20 years old. My very first time getting thrown into the fire. I was the very first match on their very first televised show. Getting slung around by Scott Pusky and, you know, Action Jackson and Red Dog and whoever else they could bring in to, you know, turn me into roadkill.
Right.
You know, but you know, the funny thing is that was a great opportunity to do the same kind of stuff. You know, and it's just funny the irony of some of the things that when I'm hearing you talk and I'm relating to my own experiences. You know, having a lot of the same kind of stuff happen, and so it's just really interesting because, you know, a lot of this stuff when you talk about things, you know, coming full circle, you know, again, I had a lot. I don't know, maybe we had maybe half a dozen matches or so. I always felt like they were always the best match on the card that night, no matter what matches or what show we were on. And who knew that the paths that would be traveled by us too, and here we are sitting here today. Just a lot of your story really resonates with me. Being a Texas guy, being a Texas kid, growing up in the world class. I mean, world class wrestling was what I watched growing up. I hated Killer Tim Brooks. I was a Von Erich fan. I did my first push up because of Kerry Von. And you know, it's just it's really cool to see what you're doing. It was always easy to be a fan of you as, you know, as a person. But you know, for me, it's kind of cool because I really feel like I'm watching something generationally happen with you, and hearing all the names. And it's funny to talk about, you know, Tim Storm when you're a teenager. And guess who was at PCW when I was 19 years old, throwing me around with his partner, Tim Storm. And so, you know, it's just really funny. You know, just number one, that's so cool. Number two, it tells us how old Tim Storm really is. He loves me, okay? It's just a shot, okay? I love the guy. And again, like you, I'm more than happy to see what you know, finally getting his due. Anyways, I think it's kind of cool. I think a lot of stuff you're saying. I mean, I want to say that Rodney Mack and Jazz have something to do with the SWE, as well as trainers. And you know, interesting. You talk about Tim and you having world titles, and you know, it meant a lot to me to know that Jazz was holding the NWA World Women's Championship. For me, that was good to be attached to a legacy of somebody that I always felt like was a mentor. So, you know, a lot of parallels of our careers, a lot of stuff I see with you. It's just really cool. And, you know, I'm definitely in your corner and a Barrett Brown fan.
I appreciate that, man. And, you know, coming up in the business, those first few years, you're always that guy in Texas that I knew. You're kind of like that. You were that pinnacle guy that I wanted to match up with. So that first match we had for that title, I remember we just kind of put it together, in 10 minutes, and we went out there and we stole the show that night. And we got to the back, and I remember everyone was so elated about it. I remember Tugboat he was like, that was the best babyface match I've ever seen. And I was that was just that was solidarity for me, man, that I could hang with some of the best in the state. So, I could say the same thing about you.
When by the time we wrestled our last few matches, I mean, I felt like everything, it was almost like there was nothing to talk about at that point.
Right.
Because we always knew the story we had to tell and whatever that had to be. And, I want to say that there had to be at least one time that I mentioned to you that, holding the title and being in the same ring with you, that this could be something that you would be holding at one point in your career, because I must have said it because I know I believed it. So it was really fulfilling for me as well, just to see that happen. I was super excited. Plus, you got such an awesome belt. That thing was that was probably one of the coolest junior titles that I've ever seen. So, really cool moment, man. For not just for you, but for those who are pulling for you.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, J. Cal, carry on.
Well, so I don't want to get too far into New Japan when there's still so much more to talk about, because I mean, the NWA announces that there's new ownership. Of course, you're stuck in limbo. You have this belt, but you're not being recognized as the champion. It's on hold. It's seized. However you want to describe it. But you're invited to participate at the NWA 70th anniversary show. You're allowed to come to that. You wrestled Laredo Kid, and you guys had one hell of a match. I think anybody who tuned into that pay-per-view just because they wanted to see Nick and Cody 3 or Nick and Cody 2, I think really underestimated that card. And with the talent that was on the card, like the aforementioned Starks. Why did I forget his name right there? For Starkman, and Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky and Willie Mack. But you had this match with Laredo Kid that just really tore down the house. And I want to say, first of all, thank you for that match, because I was there in attendance. But how was that performing in front of that crowd in Tennessee and performing in the Asylum at such a monumental card for the NWA?
Very surreal. And I think one of the most surreal things for me was that it was the same building that I wrestled Tim Storm in for TCW. But when we went there for NWA 70, and to hear in the modern day all those people chanting the letters NWA, that was surreal to me. It was like, what year are we in? What is going on? But we went out there, man, and Laredo Kid and I both mutually agreed that it was something special and we had to go tear it up, and we did. There were a few things that we weren't really allowed to do that we had to cut out, but we got to do most of what we wanted to do, man. And I remember, the overall reaction backstage was positive. I remember the internet kind of blew up for a minute about it, and it was just a very, very special night. And I think that every match had a big fight feel to it, and that's just something, especially from the NWA, in the modern day, at that time, just did not seem real until NWA 70.
So I want to say something about the match, because of course, being a junior, I mean, we've talked about this in the junior heavyweight series. Like, I'm actually a fan, and always have been a fan of junior heavyweight wrestling, period. Especially the kind that stands out from other styles of wrestling on a card, where you're watching a match in that division. And so for me, it was like, I felt like personally I was being represented in that match, because as a wrestler that always kind of wrestled in that division, and really didn't care if I was a heavyweight, because I always felt like I took it as a badge of honor. I felt like, hey, if I dominate my division, that's all that matters. And so for me, it was a big deal to me, just because I felt like as a junior heavyweight, I was being represented in the match. I really enjoyed it. But the other thing about that match, people always ask me, because every time people find out I was a pro wrestler or that kind of thing, they're always like, oh, do you miss it? And I'm like, oh, I don't miss getting slammed or punched in the face. And they're like, well, what do you miss? And I'm like, I miss my finishing move, because it really didn't hurt. And then I miss my entrance. And I remember your entrance that night. I was like, yes, if you're going to be on a big show and you're going to have a big audience and you're going to have your moment, you got to take it. You give what the promoter gives you. You know what I mean by that. But whatever they don't say don't do. I mean, you better go out there and do it. And so again, your entrance, the way you carried yourself, you know, for me, I'm like, yeah, that's how you do it on a big show. You come out with all guns blazing, let everybody know that you're here. And again, for me, it was just good to see a match like that on a card like that because, again, you know, I mean, it is 2020, or at that time it was 2017, I think it was, and 2016. And for me, I'm sitting. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Jay. He does this all. He does this for us all the time. But no, for me, it's like, hey, you know, I know that this is an old school company. I know that the old school style is something people actually tune in to see. But at the same time, this felt like a match that I'm watching that had a lot more of what we're used to seeing in the modern era of wrestling. So that was another thing for me that I felt like, and again, I've said this actually without you on camera, that I feel like the NWA needs more of that. And Jay, you know how I feel about this, that we need a little bit more representation, not just of the junior heavyweight, but of just the type of wrestling that we're used to seeing. And I've asked, you know, from the NWA when I get to review the shows and everything, I say, look, you know, you have a great production, you have a great television show. I want a little bit more. And that's the kind of stuff that I like to, you know, that I got from that match. And I thought, this is the stuff I want to see. And I won't even say, I've said this on the show multiple times, that this is the type of stuff I want to see out of the NWA. And hopefully they, you know, listen and go, man, Kevin's brilliant. Maybe we need to bring back the NWA World Jr title. I'm doubtful that that's how it's going to go, but however it happens, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that because for me, it would bring an entirely different audience and a different type of interest to the National Wrestling Alliance.
I completely agree.
And so, you know, for fans of the NWA, they might have saw that match and thought that was the last of it for you, but that's not the case at all. I mean, you've been wrestling all across the country. You know, of course, with COVID-19 and things have been put on pause or slowed down, or even some things have just stopped. I mean, you haven't. And even prior to COVID, you got that the tryout with New Japan Pro Wrestling in the United States. You had that opportunity. I think that was Rocky Romero and Shibata put on those tryouts. Could you tell us about that experience? I think you guys were in Torrance, California, at the dojo, and you guys came in and just worked. Can you tell us about that experience?
Man, I have been to that dojo. I think it's about 12 times now, and it's gotten to the point to where actually Shibata and I are pretty good friends, and I have gone to so many of the camps and stayed at the dojo so many times that it got to a point to where the young lions that stay at the house, they would just invite me out. They're like, hey, we're doing a camp on this day. Come stay with us. You can do the camp. So it eventually got to a point to where I texted Shibata and I said, what do I have to do? You know, because he grew to like me. He said that I was one of the family, but yet, you know, I was still kind of that unofficial guy at the dojo. So I said, what do I need to do? And he said, give me a few days. And then he told me about the tryout. And so I went to the tryout a few months later. And then I just remember we did the tryout, it went great, and then it was just another waiting game for me, which, you know, I've kind of grown accustomed to over the last 10 years. But then I asked Rocky, I said, what do I need to do? And he said, you need to be in Anaheim in December. And so that was Anaheim on December 7th and 8th was when I debuted at Lions Break Project 2. And just so surreal, man. Just, you know, because when I went to the dojo the first time, I went in thinking that I knew some stuff, but having to realize that you have to go into that dojo and throw every bit of what you knew out of the building and kind of start fresh and have a new mindset, because every little thing was tweaked in a certain way. And I realized that was a style that I wanted. It was so hard to adjust my mind to that and to kind of break some muscle memory, but I couldn't be more thankful that I did, and to kind of, at the same time, hold on to that foundation that, you know, Killer Tim Brooks and Mantel, all those guys laid for me. But, you know, and again, it goes back to just being thankful to be called back, you know, especially during this downtime.
So real quick, Jay, can you see me on camera?
Yeah.
Okay, because everybody's wearing ball caps. So I thought, I just throw that. I saw the Angels hat you had on. I just thought I'd come up and
Understood, man. But you know what? I still got the best player in the game playing center field in Anaheim. So let's get back to wrestling.
So I'll have you know, my wife bought me the powder blue. It just didn't fit, or I'd have that on tonight just for this show. I was ready, but I got my other Ranger cap just for you. Just so you know, Barrett, we have a baseball rivalry going. Texas and the Angels obviously are rivals in the same division, and we this thing is going to probably go on for life. So I thought I'd just throw that hat out there. But Barrett, I'm going to say something. Take it for what it's worth. Your athletic prowess, the type of wrestling that you do, I know you can do the high flying stuff, but I wouldn't classify you as an acrobat, and you know what I mean by that. Guys like ACH can do 20 flips in a match, land on their feet every single time, and it's almost like they don't even do it. And I don't mean that. That's not a knock on those guys. That's just an unbelievable skill set and talent. But you, to me, come across more as an athletic type guy, somebody who has a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, a lot of agility. So I think when I said that the junior heavyweight style that they do in New Japan, or really New Japan style of wrestling in general, I really do think it fits your skill set. So hearing you talk about going through the training, letting your body learn about what the way that they do things there. I mean, I really think in a company that rewards not only the size of wrestler that you are, but the type of wrestling style. You're a hard-hitting wrestler. You don't pull punches in your matches at all. Everything's in there. Everything that you do looks believable. Everything's high impact. You wrestle. You know how to sit in the middle of the ring and actually do that. Lots of counter wrestling. Obviously, I've watched your matches. I wouldn't know all this stuff. I've actually, wrestled you, but you're a different guy now than the guy that I wrestled. Much better, and you're better than I ever was. And I'll say that you have what it takes to cross whatever you were doing before, integrate that in. But man, like I said, I want to see that. I really want to see you get out there and stretch those dudes. And as we would say, and Rodney would know what this means, bring the wood. Put some forums in there. Let them remember who you are. I think you have that, and that's something that I really think you have. And again, this is not me just saying this just to say it. I'm just saying you might be in the right place at the right time with the right company, and you know how important that is. We all know. We talk about this all the time. We all know how important that is. So I just encourage you, just to, of course, we don't want to be overtly optimistic. Just like you said earlier, you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch. But at the same time, there has to be a certain, and again, ACH is a perfect example, a certain level of confidence in yourself that, hey, my time, this is my place, this is for me. I would say that you're in the right place at the right time, and you have the right style, and you're kind of the right guy, because take hold of the novelty that you are. The fact that they don't have Texas guys, they don't have guys that look like you, that have kind of what you have. That's unique, and that's something that a place like New Japan will appreciate. I mean, think about a guy like Stan Hansen. That, big old Ted, you'd have never looked at him and thought, oh, he's going to be huge in Japan. Right. But yet, man, I mean, good God, he was a freaking legend. And so, again, I'm just saying the sky's the limit. Let your style adjust and learn what you can. But I think you're the right kind of wrestler for that. I've noticed a lot of times the guys that are maybe overtly acrobatic or do a lot of high flying, yes, they get a well reception. A lot of them do. But when you look at guys like ACH and Will Ospreay, these guys are technicians in the ring. They're hard-hitting guys. And that's the type of style that I think you definitely have. But I also think you have a little bit more of a mean streak in you that's very obvious. And I would just say, man, let that thing be. Let it be and let it out and do your thing.
For sure, man. I appreciate it. And it's funny, I try to get as much longevity out of my career as I can. You know, I see all these guys doing all the flips and stuff, and you know that's good. But I got to the point to where I don't like to just call moves anymore. I want to call moments. I want to make people feel something, and I think that you get more longevity out of that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. Sorry, Jay, but you know that's the thing about wrestling is that it's storytelling. It's about creating moments for people. It's not about like just getting an ooh-ah, but giving people something where they go, oh, do you remember when XYZ happened? Very rarely do they say, do you remember this move? Yeah. It's typically the story that was being told and the way it was being told. And a lot of times you have just the right situations happening at the right time. So keep that mindset, because look for that story that could be told that either no one's ever told or that everyone you know they want to hear it.
Definitely.
There you go, Jay. Sorry about that.
No worries, brother. So the other thing too is we are kind of winding down, but I do want to talk about this New Japan Strong, the Lions Break Collision. I mean, this is part of your new home now. Being able to, you know, you've been to that newly renovated Ocean View Pavilion. That's the home of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. But under current circumstances, it is now the home of New Japan of USA, New Japan of America. And they did that building. It looks amazing on TV. It looks, from what I've seen, it looks great. And you're out there, you're wrestling some top tier talents. Just last week, you got the victory over Jordan Clearwater. I know he's an up and comer, but he's a guy who, you know, I know Championship Wrestling from Hollywood has a lot of stock in that guy, and they expect big things from him. And you got a victory over him last week in that tag team match. Tell me about this opportunity with New Japan Strong. Tell me what you think going forward, and just tell me about this experience.
Very surreal. I didn't realize it until I got there that was where we were going to be filming it. And I met David Marquez at NWA 70, and great guy, just such a knowledge for the business. You know what I mean? And that's not knocking anyone else there, because every one of those guys know what they're doing. But it wasn't a situation where I felt uncomfortable backstage. Everyone was like a family, and they were all there for, you know, the same reason, to do what we love, to get content out there for one of the best companies on the planet, and to entertain people. And, you know, we all had that same mindset. We all had fun. And if you're booked against each other, you go out there and you just beat the living hell out of each other. You know what I mean? And you make it mean something. And I think that was the main thing. I know that I roomed with Logan Regal, one of the Regal twins. A shout out to them, because those two guys are one of the most underrated tag teams I think in the country. They are phenomenal. But you know, we said, you know, if we get in there against each other, it's on, and that was the mindset. But at the end of the day, like I said, we all had the same mentality, just for the love of the sport, to give it every bit of what we had.
So now this is where I'm going to try to steer the conversation, and obviously if things are being discussed, you can't talk about that. But will you be back at New Japan Strong, or are there more matches for you to be taking part in?
I think that you should definitely stay tuned to New Japan Strong. That's all I will say.
Woo! Well, I'll stay tuned.
And our buddy Dave Marquez just recently announced the United Wrestling Network pay-per-view series. Any discussion with Dave Marquez about maybe becoming a part of that project?
Not just yet. Hopefully the next time that I converse with David, that will come up, because I'm definitely interested. You know, hopefully this can be the next step with the NWA for me. Trust me, I was definitely intrigued when I saw the tweets and all the posts about it. So I'm not gonna get my hopes super high, like I said before. But if something comes of it, I will definitely make the most of it.
And so then I guess that leaves us with, of course, the SWE. And I know that's your home because you're the TV champion. What's next on the horizon for you there? I mean, when do you get to step into the ring again for them?
So this Sunday we will have 2 tapings, one at 2 p.m. and one at 5 p.m. At the Canton Civic Center. which fortunately for me is very close to home. And I should be defending my championship on both of those shows, if I make it out of the first taping with the championship. So it's just going to be good to finally be back in front of a great production like that. I'm very fortunate to be trusted and involved with great production and just phenomenal professional wrestlers.
And I guess the last thing I have, Kevin, do you have anything else?
Give Rodney Mack a good punch in the stomach for me, or maybe a hug just to save your own life. Tell him I miss him. Tell Dave Marquez next time you talk to him that I love him, miss him too. He better treat you right. You may want to leave that last part out. Honestly, I was really looking forward to this, just to be able to catch up with you more than anything. Kind of the same thing when we had Ricky on, just to catch up and see how you're doing, and just let you know, man, that I'm lifting you up in prayer, man, and keeping you in my thoughts. And I'm a fan. I'll be your friend. We were opponents, but more than anything, right now, I'm just a fan. I love the business, and if you and Hammerstone ever tag up and need a manager, just give me a call.
For sure, man.
So for the last couple of weeks, Kevin and DKM and myself, we've been talking about the history of the World Junior Heavyweight Championship. And so my question to you, to just end this interview, and again, thank you for being here, is
Absolutely.
If the phone call comes in, are you ready? Are you ready to strap on that red title again and defend it?
I do my best to stay ready so I don't have to get ready. So I think that as soon as they call, if they call, I will definitely, like I always have done or tried to do over the last 10 years, is make the most of any opportunity that they give.
Love it.
So Barrett Brown, where can they follow the folks listening to the show right now, watching the show? Where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on obviously my Facebook page, Barrett Brown, but on Twitter at TCO_BarrettB. You can find my Instagram page, Barrett Brown TC1. You can go to my website, www.barrettbrownpro.com. I have links to all my social media there, as well as my YouTube channel and a built-in merchandise page on that website as well. So here in hopefully the coming weeks and months, I can have some cool announcements for you guys, and they'll be listed on all those platforms.
That's great, man. I really do appreciate your time. DCAM as well, the three of us are huge junior heavyweight wrestling fans, and aside from what you've done in the NWA, we sure would like to see you have an opportunity to defend that title once again. But even if that never happens, to know that you're the last man to hold that belt, and the opportunities that are coming in front of you that you're taking, we're very proud of the way you are handling yourself and that time you represented the NWA. So again, as a fan, I want to say thank you.
Well, man, as a humbled guest, I want to thank you both, because this has been a really cool trip down memory lane, and it's really humbling to hear all the compliments. So I want to thank you guys for having me on.
Well, cool, man. Well, be well, stay safe, and we hope to talk with you sometime down the road, hopefully with that title.
Absolutely.
All right, be well.
Yes.
Hey, guys.